So welcome to your practice entry. You want to have your bolster so it's set up spine-wise with a pretty tightly wound up blanket below it. And really emphasize that that blanket is not like a flat pushover blanket. You want it to be in a nice kind of tugged up pattern so that it'll feel like it's lifting up your rib cage. So we're going to work with this cross layer chest opener. So if you're pretty long, you might put a block under your seat for this one and then lengthen back. If you want to try sitting on the very kind of edge wedge of your bolster, the short end. And then when you recline, you've got your sandbag and belt besides you, you can feel that if you're pretty tall, you might find a block here under your rear could be an advantage, right? But I want you to still explore what would the possibility be if you use the bolster and then you let your head be away from the bolster as if your emphasis or your visualization to start is knees bent, feet apart, and the crown of the head has more of a reach towards the back. And that's kind of a mental experience of the crown not being kind of shoved back into the head down into the body, but reaching it back. I mean, your head is on top of you most of the time, and it's, you know, the spine doesn't have that experience of releasing as often as your restorative class, right? So use this up into helping you out. So once your head is on your block, the block height is medium or it's the lowest height. Consider that the jaw is going to be supported even though the block is really firm. It's nice to have a positional support that's a firm support. So we take a sandbag and we elevate that sand just below the sternum. Maybe you're finding the ribs are a settling atmosphere for the weight bag. And then sort out your feet, maybe toe, heel, your feet wide, toe, heel, your feet a little closer to hips distancing. And then once you sense where the knees are bending to start, I want you to find that the feet are enough apart that the back of the pelvis is heavy, so you create more of a back bend or arch. And then you start to open up the arms, but relax the hands on the floor. So I have my spare blanket off to the side. It is important you have that somewhere for poses ahead. And the belt, we won't use that for this chest opener piece because I want us to work on the pectoral muscles in the chest, actually surrendering, and feel if you can experiment with the inhale, filling the body, and the out breath, empty the lungs. And feeling that there is more to let go of in the chest and the heart. So with the position of the arms, and you might notice one arm gives ease faster than the other. So lowering the hands a little down or sliding them out. They can both affect the sensation of the breathing muscles. So wander the arms to where they feel. I'm using my blanket that's under my bolster to kind of catch my elbows. And then the work is to move the shoulder blades back and then maybe scoot your feet down so the legs are still in a separated stance, but I'm kind of reaching through my heels and then relaxing my weight. Now it shifts down to my seat. The block needs to be moved a little bit in. So take some time to create some parts of your structural atmosphere usually needs kind of a reset, like the shoulder blades squeezing in towards the spine. But then once you attempt that, let your body ease and breathe. If this is feeling like it drains the back, you can bring the knees to point up, the feet down. You can choose to have the legs change so that there's a little more comfortable passage in the low back. So either is fine. Let's let either be 100%, even if the legs down seems like it's where you're aiming. Okay, and let the arms continue that relaxed position. They're not trying and efforting, but they are blending that motion to open the chest. And now feeling where the legs downwards can start to be both bending and feet down, bottoms of the feet down. And now reach back for that block under your head. I want you to just reach the hands on the sides of the block and feel kind of the elbows like you have an helmet, right? The elbows kind of squeeze a little in towards the sides of you, not touching you, but they are bending. And then feeling if you move your elbows as if they're pointing back, keep the block under your head, and then bring your hands both together behind your head, interlace your fingers at the roots, and turn the hands inside out, turn the palms towards the back, and give that full reach. Good, so that experience of the sand could get a little smaller. Feels like it's part of your body after a while with breathing. And now as you release the grip, flow the arms and taking the sand off, reach your hands back for the block and push the sides of the block and lift your head. And then you're going to slide down. Now, if you have a block under your seat, you're going to need to slide that away first. You're going to slide down so your rear touches down or your sitting bones do touch down in front of the lengthening bolster. And then when you do come up, you're going to just put that block off to the side yard and reach to your legs. And then as you come up, bring your chin downwards. And then push into your hands, pull your legs to bring yourself up. And let's kind of get a feel of just this orientation. So we'll shift back and forward on that bolster, lie back about 1/3 of the way, and then come back up. And then get a feel of your hands either behind your legs or on top of the knees, and that position of pulling yourself up center, okay? Now feel when you're here, you're gonna slide your feet forward and get some props to change up. You're gonna get a blanket, put it on top of your bolster behind you. So now you got a little nice kind of terrace support for your back. We're gonna take boat pose with our belt. So getting ready to get in our boat. Let's make a belt loop. So you wanna connect the belt overhead. And why not getting the size of it so it's plenty big to scoop up some feet, your feet. And then when you tug on the belt and you work on that lift up, you know, be real accepting of your balance predicament here. So I find that there is some sensible flexibility you can strive with in this pose. Like if you are fairly mobilized in the hamstrings, work on that spine lift, but give yourself some freedom to kind of shift forward and back and bend your knees, and curiosity about the ribs experience with breath. So the hands could be holding on to your side carriage and feeling the sense of inhale, filling up into your hands. And centering. Okay. So we've had some of this upper layer, upper body pattern. And when you have your legs kind of bound with the back muscles here, there's some restriction, right, to allow yourself to kind of hold your center awareness. It's not necessarily holding your center tall, it's holding center awareness. So let's try, when we come into Baddha Konasana, that we bend the knees and we get our belt with our hands. And then I want you to bring your knees so they separate and the belt is still around the bottom of your feet, and then lower your feet down and then bring your belt down on the top of the thighs. And if you need to scoot closer to your bolster, you do, but you don't want to sit on top of it. That doesn't happen to anybody. Okay, so reach around your feet. I would be very careful that you get a snug hold of your feet on this, on the top of really your connector on your foot bone into your shin. You know, it's a fairly open spot there. And so see if you can use the belt to hold that together and then get the buckle in a reachable spot near your hip. And then slide the belt so it's as low at the back of your waist, actually, so it's at the eyebrows of the buttocks. Blocks under legs, regardless of your flexibility, protect your joints. And then as we lower back, I like to push down into the bolster with my hands, and then I kind of smoosh my body on the top of the bolster. But you know, there's parts of your back that refrain from letting go sometimes on this pose. So the higher the knees are, right, the more easy it is for your back to lie down. That's something to recognize in Supta Baddha Konasana. Knees are pointed up so you have a pelvic basin. And then once you're aligned here, okay, you can add the sand from heart to belly. I'm going to have us do kind of our sandings today, kind of specific. So even if the breath tune-up isn't clarified every time, I kind of get lost on the pose pattern, the prop positioning and all that. But when you're in the channel of the next shape, including your sand, just noticing where the breath responds, where the level of skin moves, and maybe your arms are a little closer this time, unless you feel better about having the arms farther out. This is an opportunity for you to let your palms soften and feel the possibility of your elbow to your wrist being nearly even for a moment. Breathing so it's fairly smooth through the nose, out through the mouth. Notice how comfortable it is in a home practice to energize the breath or the sound. Some of us like to find that as a focus, some not as much, but kind of volumize your experience of breathing. Volumize might not be the exact explanation, maybe amplify. So with the breath and the diaphragm, right? So that's this diaphragm here. So when we breathe in, you want to feel that the abdomen has some mild amount of lift. And it is resisting right with the sand. And so as you exhale, you let the sand be a supportive cover. Now, if the legs are entirely comfy, there's no thigh stretch, you might decide to lower the block height. As long as the feet don't clench together, if they start to get a little edgy and you notice the nervous system is responding and parts of the body kind of seize up, then that's an indication you're just not, your nervous system isn't guiding you to go a little more intense. But if you claim that and you can move your block a little lower, you can slide them out so they're just under the knees. Some feel very confident without the blocks, I'm sure. I like to use them regardless if my legs actually feel comfy without. And that's really protecting the SI joint, right, anterior part. So you just won't want to blow this space out. So you want to get a feeling of some connectivity and threads of toning in the pelvic floor. That's another part of it, is tone. So if I let my legs go all loosey-goosey, then I'm losing a little bit of that tone. So a slight lift of the knees is good. And I think the final part is to just be experiencing the shape. Even though your mind might be wondering where the shape's going to go, or should I get my props ready for the shape coming up? See if you can experience this position, noticing anything new. Maybe the legs feel kind of flooded with circulation draining through the legs. Now we'll unbuckle. May as well keep your sand on as long as you can, and slide the belt so it's not lingering over your feet or feel like you're kind of slightly unbound. So let your belt be off of the touching of the body. And then as your knees start to come up, pointing them up, let's take that and slide the feet apart. If you have a ball, get that. This layer of the sand for a few more seconds is helpful to keep your spine wise, right? Spine-wise support. Now I'm going to try this today with my feet a little farther downstream and see if my back can stay situated, relaxed on the bolster. I might still need to walk my feet closer in, but we'll just see. So if you don't have a ball, you're going to put either the block or even your sandbag works under your left upper outer leg. Okay, so now we'll move our sand, whether you put it under your left leg or you just put it to the side of you. Those are the balls on the upper outer left leg. And then hands down, okay, not awkwardly close, but palms down. Push down into your left foot and then activate that right side of your abdomen into the psoas. So when you kind of bear your back muscles down and towards the bolster, you're going to lift up the right leg and then try to cross that right ankle to the left knee. It's not super easy to do. To do that controlled maneuver in your psoas, deep abdominal, and then not clenching in the inner thigh, right? Just try to get it to cross the ankle to the left knee. And then let your body weight lean into the ball or the sand. I think sand is probably a better option than a block, but something that has a responsive surface that you can kind of push into so you're not getting jabbed in the leg. Hold the right knee with your left hand. Some will do this without any prop under the leg. That's clearly an option too. But when you hold on to the right knee, experience the outer thigh into the hip, kind of that web of circulation. It's a nice way to consider it, kind of your web of your thigh, upper thigh band into the hip and behind the hip. So you want to try to cast a wider net of circulation around the hip. I'm thinking like a net, like not like internet, but like a net, like you put your lemons in or something. Kind of a net that's around the hip. So you try to let that widen, that band, and when you hold onto the knee, the pose of pulling to the left with your left hand, I think is a good ambition for this versus trying to pull it towards you. You know, and that's tricky for your core hip to do that. So the right arm stretches back. Let's give that a few moments. So head is on the blanket and the bolster, I'm assuming. Okay, now bring the left hand down. The knees come back to their kind of pose pattern one before shifting. And then put a block on that inner right leg and use your hands to press that inner leg away from you. Just about 30 seconds of this. So push now. I'm closer to my knee than I am my upper thigh, but you can go in the center. I find just a little closer to my knee keeps my back stable, but I'm probably a little extra particular about it because I want to get change from these practices and feel good from them. Okay, now lower down, uncross the right foot, take that left foot up and cross it and just kind of feel, we came into it this side a little different. We've already been operating in the knee movements. So when you lift the leg and cross it, what are your habits to get that swing of the leg? Ball goes to the right or the sandbag, or if you like to use nothing, that's okay. Tilt the body weight into the ball. And kind of get a feel of that musculature of the hip by holding onto the left knee with the right hand. And you're, you know, on one side, you might feel like you naturally pull towards you with the hand versus the gliding across. So I would be just kind of curious where this aims for your circulation, how it aims across, what's comfortable for you. But we're not trying to compete to whoever makes the marker the farthest. We're finding the inner lengthening and that wellness in the circulation kind of fibers into your hip. So maybe the idea of the net doesn't work for you, but trying to think of that span of my, because I feel it primarily in the top thigh, to, you know, mostly the rear, right, and the hip, but it's kind of all in this net. So I'm trying to cross that leg over to the right. And you'll find this, the kind of the sweet spot where you can feel it's sincerely holding on to be attached to you, right? It's your attachments that hold really tight inside, literally. Yeah, you could work on this one for a while. If this is a tight area for you and you find that you're getting something kind of stirred up, this might be a good, take a note and do this in home practice. And we can add different things to it if you ever want to spin off on this one. Not today, but you like this pattern. Now, as you release, you're going to bring the knee back out, get a block. There's my block. And then place the block to that left inner leg and push away. Yeah, and the knees are different sensitivities, right, from side to side, perhaps. I sometimes like palpating. Right, one side seems to be a better palpator than the other as far as the thigh response. If it's pretty intense here and boggy and you don't like to be prodded there, you know, try some real subtle movement with that block, pushing and sliding towards your knee. Just be a few more moments. Spine centered. Seems like a reasonable place to center. Okay, so we'll take a final bridge on this pattern before we come around to side sage. So I want you to get a feel of your legs uncrossing and the block under your pelvis, and then taking one of those blankets off. Okay, you can only get one anyhow, huh? But when I am brain back and centered on my bolster, make those robot arms. This is a little different way of coming into a variation on. There's probably 5 or 6 bridges we're going to do today. So we can make a catalog of our restorative bridges. But when you're here, I want you to bring both arms straight back. So they're individual reachers, okay? And then bring the right leg up, and you're going to draw that leg, that knee, just pointing it up. You don't have to tug it in towards your core, but feel when you bend and you lift up your foot and that organization and lower down, not long, change the side, opposite leg comes up. Try to feel an equalized reach. If your arms kind of swing back and you crease at the elbows, and I want you to try to keep the volume in the arms, lower that left foot. And then arms are going to stretch up towards sky. And then let's try to lift up the hips a little higher so they're off the block. Pushing into your feet. The feet might be parallel. They might be trying to turn out. So I want you to let the hands feel like they got some parallelisms going on. So maybe the feet will compare to that. We don't really know if they look like that quite in the moment. But when you're scooping the tail this way, we'll lower our hands down to get the block aside. And then just get a feel of how the tail circulation is responding as you lower the spine. So you'll feel the lowest parts of your back and then the arch. And then before you let your seat completely release, I want you to start rolling to the left and then come around to your left hip and then shift your hands to help you lift up your core. Take a bolster, turn it across the mat, and then we'll get our blanket. So we're going to set them up so they're in a quarter fold stack too. I find that I need the blanket on top or whichever, I just need the height more. Lately, it feels more comfortable for my neck. I think possibly in practice, you might find you get a little bit more customized and make it so that your neck is comfortable. So if you have a ball or a block on the inside of the right knee option, but get that sandbag and let it be ready to go. So you could put it on the left inner knee and then center onto your props here before you get the sand on. So that sometimes works. I got a block overhead and my blanket is stacked up high enough so my side of my neck, if I touch the left side of my neck, I can feel it relax a little bit. Okay, so get some energy around, careful here, some energy around the neck muscles, swallowing, centering, and then I'll get my sand on. And I'll put that sand support somewhere that's higher on my body than where I was just working, which was the lower layers, the hips. Now we're going to band back our connectors of our hip, our front of our hip into our hip flexor. And then as we reach the right arm over, feel if you can extend the rib cage, even if you lose your sand, right? Your sand might slide off with breath, but get that position of your hand on the block. I like a block quite a bit. Something where it feels like it's able to relax the whole strip of the arm, right? And feeling the skin on the arm get some circulation. So you're able to process the experience of the pose. So these are pretty full, deep sensations in our skin in practice. The left arm is between the bolster and the blankets. Left hemisphere is down. Some of you are going to strive to move your right leg farther back, and some will keep it straight down from the pelvic center. Breathing in the rib cage, equilibrium. Great, so a few more moments. You might be working with finding release in your neck. Now, as the arm overhead gets to move to either relax on your bolster, on the other hand or arm, or you stretch it and kind of swing the ribs open. So you'll likely lose your sand if you respond in that direction with the ribs, but it's nice to feel the felt sense of the band of muscles from the intercostals, right, the breathing muscles up into the pectorals. And if the arm is free like this and your head is down, you might receive some circulation that is pretty unique and really integrated whole body support. A few more moments, as she keeps saying. And now tap into the waist movement, the kind of wriggly waist, wriggling through. We'll keep the bolster as it is under us, but we're gonna put our seat on it instead of our ribs. So there's some things that you'll gain from that, like you'll gain an ability to sit up, but there's some things that you wanna keep of this position right here. So kind of notice this movement. This is the same movement we'll do sitting, but our spine is going to be upright. So when I turn towards my left down, and then I come up, trying to find that accumulation of movement, then we're going to take a seat and then stretch our right leg out. So let's see what's similar. Okay, so we'll stretch the right leg out. It's going to be this movement pattern. So I've got the right leg out, the sand is on my left upper leg with that knee bent. So it's kind of this positioning of grounding and rooting with the left leg bending, sanded. And with that right arm, I know holding a belt could be really useful. So if you want to use a belt under your right foot to pull, I sometimes like to use a block. And just put that block at a low or second setting, the size on the right side of your leg, and then slide down. If you can get your elbow onto that, whether the block needs to go up or lower, and then feel that swing. That's a slow swing of the arm. And now that we've shifted, right, we had the right arm open last time, now it's left arm. Can you find some similarities here? Not that we're going to do a checklist and see if we all have the same ones, but feel where that left hand could be touching behind you. The side was down a few moments ago. So it's nice to flush it out. Yeah, so let the flesh flush. You're going to feel just a few more of these now with this rib space in a side stretch. Now, you might think that the side stretch we have laying on the bolster is more of a, true side stretch in the terms of lying on one, but this has some obvious choice of support for our waist. And the lower belly is kind of in a mystery area here. So when you sit up, you're kind of tilted to the right to start, So when you reach your right hand for that left knee or above the knee, I want you to reach out through the right foot. So flex that foot out. Notice that that foot is about 1 or 2 o'clock on the right hand side. Left hand is back on maybe the blankets, and then turn. This is twist 1 of 2 in the series. So I want you to feel where the height of your breath is in your ribs when you turn this way. Is it like lower pockets of the belly that you feel it moving, or is it like in these viscerally tougher skin areas? Not to say your lower belly isn't tough skin, but it's just, it's a different kind of skin support, right, with the organs. Now, as you come back to center, we're going to change for a moment. We'll take our sand away. We'll reach the right leg forward and then cross the left leg over, but keep the right leg straight. Flex the foot. If it hurts to flex it, just let the heel find a resting lane. And again, if that doesn't feel good, you can always put a sandbag under your right leg, okay? If it's hurting anywhere in the base of the leg. Now, when we lift up in the midsection, we're collecting our hands under that left knee and then sitting kind of prim and proper. There's some goodness to this experience with the spine up, the shoulders centered, down from the ears. Okay, left hand back to that twist, hook the right elbow to that left leg and turn, and feel if the twist has moved up into the body or if it's about the same zone. Okay, my hope is that you feel a little tighter bound of a twist. The rotation's not nearly as far behind that you can get, cranking it. So acceptance is a good thing here. Straighten the right arm if possible. Try to lift up at the heart. Doesn't mean you have to lift your jaw, but you want to lift up at the heart. Good, so feel where the turn is. And it's like you turn and there's no more turn. Right? It's not like you're an owl. But when you find that pivot, it includes an arm support and all the ribs involved. So come back to center forward to the knees and cross the legs. So left leg is forward of right shin or knee, could be either. And then come into a forward bend. And I would encourage you to use maybe one block if you would like under your hands. So just widen out a block and lean forward. We'll be free of sand unless you're a real sand bearer and need to put it on. You can put your sand on your left upper leg, but lean forward, okay? And I want you to let the body shift from right to left sitting bones. So you're kind of bobbing. Sitting bone bobbing, okay. So you want to tilt side to side so the knee actually lifts and it tilts down. And then feel when you're right to the center and take your hand maybe to the floor, then move your block to the right. And you're going to aim towards that 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock direction on the right side. When we first entered this shape, we had this direction that we were going to when we were leaning, this exact direction. So if it even makes sense, that's okay. It doesn't have to, but I'll do the sense making. Good luck with hearing that. So with that sense of movement, predicting that it's in your left hip a bit. Now, I would just let that block be there. You don't need to move it really, so you might as well keep with your bone structure. And then when you bring your left hand to the upper leg, left leg, you're gonna turn your heart back forward. So it's just hovering over the ground, and right hand to left or to right leg. And then feel the arch of the spine to bring you up. Okay, center moment, shoulders back, heart forwarding your heart. And then as you slide both feet forward, we're going to keep the knees in a heavy bend and hands on bolster, slide down, and then take that side sage to the right hip. Okay, so we're shifting over to our right hip with the ball maybe on the inner left leg, and then just taking the shape of support with maybe your sand on the left side and your arm guiding to the block overhead or the floor if it's pretty easy for you. But where that right knee is bending, you want to really feel that hinge at the hip, the knee pulls up, and that length of the left arm. Now feeling the little things you can do to maneuver and feel more, a little bit more spaciousness inside that you can eke out. So you'll find little tricks of the trade that you'll do. You'll kind of feel your right hip bone, and then you might, not tuck your tailbone, but you kind of slide the different pieces of the bone shape so that you're cozy. But we're really working, if you were to touch your low back area, there's quite a back bend out of this side stretch. So that's why I find this one interesting, that this side sage is generally a recommended shape to explore if your back is not feeling well, if it's feeling stiff, or there's spots that are needing to be addressed. This is a good pose to be in, but you've got to find your personalized way of using your sand, using the movement of your hip. This is a good one. The other things that you can do to help your back, I find, is working with different waves of cat-cow and getting that spine to be very movable, unless it can't move much if it's stiff. Give this a few more breaths here. Okay, so let the length go through the side. Feel if you roll in the back of your head, that's okay. But you might need that blanket to be kind of doubled up more than you thought for the support. Even if you get, 80% of the exact details correct, but you're feeling pretty good with it, that's 100%. Now with that left hand starting to shift, I think this side, you could leave your block back there if it's there. But let the left arm open. Okay, so get a feel for this side landscape, or the sidescape. Don't escape the side. But when you make the bone structure roll to the right, you tuck in with that left knee, and you're going to come up now to recognize where we move. It might be nice how great you're in your own little space, because you can kind of flow however you want, how you get up. You kind of find your way to sitting. Remember, this side, this was reaching. So this side, we're going to kind of shift down through and kind of, basically do our blender work with it. So left leg stretches out, right leg bends. If you want something under your right knee, just use a ball or a block, or, well, I'm using my block besides my leg, but you could put something under it if it feels like you could use some help. So we're leaning down with that left arm on either a block or a belt under the foot we're holding, you choose, to the left leg. And we're kind of oozing down to that circulation that we were just working through, and then turning the waist towards the right and reaching that right arm either over or behind you. But experiment with the sensation of the circulation in your core, and especially this quadratus lumborum area here in this low back of the waist into the pelvis. So you're going to feel that if you kind of squish down here, and you're going to feel that if you turn your waist here. So just kind of be waist curious here. Yeah, and there's no requirement that you have to have your hand on a block. You could hold a belt. I like to get my elbow down if I can, and maybe the block goes up all the way. And then feature that movement. Come up and turn to the right, left hand to the right leg, rotate, and be a little caring of your shoulder definition. So not the blade as much as that. If your shoulder is popped up a bit, like it's not literally popped out, but the shoulder head is lifting and you're kind of doing this kind of motion with shrugging. I want you to work on not necessarily counter shrug, but feel the turn. You might need to muster up enough support with your right hand on the blanket behind you, but rotate the ribs, the belly, and that lower belly is likely forward. It's not twisting. So we're learning, I think some of us, we might do a little bit of just chat about it sometime, but our thoracic is the twisters, right? We want to have that be what gives us all the twist is our thoracic chamber. And the lumbars are doing our arching. So right now that lower chunk of 5 vertebrae is arching. And then the 12 in the middle are turning. So it's good news if your belly is not turning everything with you. It's still centering and arching. Enough of that. Now come back center, left leg forward, right leg crosses over, get rid of your sand, and then get a feel here of that lift, hands reaching under the right knee, lifting up with the crown of the head, the reach of the left foot, the heel, and be moved by the breath. We're going back to that turn, so we're responding to the same direction. We're getting pretty wrung out in the core. So feel when you rotate. And the left arm could hook to the outside of the right leg. It could be holding the right leg with the hand and suggesting that support. You know, without forcing, you know, you might find that, well, you would like to get further around, but again, we want the lumbars to work right. We want the SI joint to be a joint of stability, not mobility. So we're trying to do all these correct things with our structure at the same time. So that way it can sometimes feel, I guess, boring sometimes, but keeping it with the program of structure, support. So when I come back around, now I'm going to go prone. So actually not quite yet. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So right foot forward of the left knee. And then let's take a block and bring ourselves forward, almost prone. So hands onto maybe the floor, maybe a block. And where the knee has direction is if they're moving downwards. I know they point out, but I want you to try to get a feeling of your circulation to be moving down with your knee, with the thighs, and the flow of the body forward from the bolster. You're still on the bolster. Okay, feel where that breath is lifting in your back, like you have this cat shape. Cat pose. And you can move your block to the left. You could keep it in the front. Let's give it about 15 more seconds here. And exploring where the flex is in your right foot. And now when the hips have this much heat that's building, we're going to isolate one. So what we'll do is we'll take the hands, so the block can be, I think, anywhere. I think that's going to matter. But when you put your hands onto your legs and prop yourself to spine up, you want to sort out so there's no block behind you. And there's only one blanket behind your bolster. So get it snug up to the bolster and take pigeon, right leg back, left knee forwards. So left pigeon, top of the right thigh is trying to layer down. So I think this takes some finesse to experiment with your body shape. And some of us have, the waist is a little longer, the arms, the legs. So to explore the weight from your left seat to your knee is pretty interesting too. So can you bring your elbows down onto either the blocks, or you could also use your other blanket for this one under your elbows. There's a couple good options for that. So lean in down to the elbows and let the spine feel its natural arch. So it's a pretty different arch in the back from when we were sitting upright and twisting. Now it's kind of going into this forward fold. You can always bring your head all the way down to your hands, moving your elbows wide, or keep it where you're at. You choose. Back muscles spreading, breath spreading through the ribs. Okay, so feel where there's some significant circulation in your left hip, okay? So when I come back, we're gonna come to all fours pattern. So we will get to the other pigeon in just a bit, but I want you to have some reflection in the center. So when you slide your hands back, left knee with that openness, you're gonna move your toes under on the right foot as best as you can, maneuver this, that you come back to table, okay? So you find your legs drawing back into that simple tabletop position, okay? And let's see, let's move our bolster away, forward. Hands now can be right under the shoulder as far as you know it. So they're a little closer in than you might be used to in this table pose. So the knees a little wider than hips distance. If this hurts your wrists and you find this doesn't work, you can be on your elbows. You can also turn the hands out a little bit. That's one option. You could kind of fuss around with the hand pressure. But when you round your back, your chin moves towards your chest. Stretch between the blades. Okay. Now get a feel, is there any difference in moving the ribs farther back, like you're trying to pull your belly in and up? So if you can isolate that action without tightening through the groins, that's kind of what you're aiming towards. It's easier to learn that when you're in bridge pose, but it's this is a really smart way to strengthen into the core. So I want you to come back to what might be neutral or kind of casual, to all fours, and then bring your knees together, close enough. Let your toes hook under, stretch up into dog pose. So the feet are much closer than you might be used to in this balance. But use the moment as a balance of the arms and the legs and the calf stretching. Feel the calf circulation. Head between the arms. Lower the left knee. Okay, it can be a little weird to do with the right leg back, but when we do that, we'll bring the right knee in towards our forehead. So chin to chest, tuck, And then bring that right leg back with the toes under, right? And the foot on the floor with the, well, assuming your foot's on the floor if your toes are under. Hands are wider on the mat, as wide as you want to go. Okay, tuck that right knee in. I want you to keep the foot relaxed when you tuck. Okay, and then this time as the right leg lifts in the air behind you, you're going to find the right lift and try to maneuver the pelvis so it's a little more level, so you're not, rolling your hip open like fire hydrant pose, you're level. And then tuck the knee and bring the knees wide and come back to child's pose. In fact, really let the knees widen. Reach your hips back towards your feet and bring your hands under your forehead and relax your spine and your legs and all the energies of your body that are kind of gripping from the last pose. Let the spine center. Now, as you come up with your head and your hands wide on the mat in front, as you lift up your hips, just kind of notice, even if I tilt back, I don't necessarily need to go all the way down to sit. You kind of feel how you work from your above your knees to your pelvis to move. And then tuck the right leg back into pointing the knee forward, and then let the left foot reach back. So I'm feeling this kind of neutral opportunity. The only thing that would make this even better is if you had somehow rigged up a belt around your frontal hip bone, right? And then had that it would hold you from the ceiling, so you could do these really well to keep your balance perfect. But for the moment, we're going to work with strengthening our hip this way. So if we had the belt holding us, we could strengthen it as well. Tuck your left knee in towards your forehead, chin to chest. Reach the left foot back on the floor. Come forward with your chest, lift up forward. This is moving it a little farther. And one more time, draw that left knee, in towards your forehead, tuck. This time leg goes back in the air. So it's not touching the floor, it's up. And then we all have a challenge here to find balance in our center. So breathe. Okay, now if my head tilts up because I'm kind of looking around, I'm going to try to get my head back to center and then collect my left knee back besides the right. Knees are going to separate. And then I want you to make little circles, like you're rotating. It's not cat-cow pose and the pelvis is not arching that much, but you're just making circles with the hips. Go both directions. Like if you had like a light beam out of your belly button, it would make circles on the floor. That kind of an idea with movement. Just to kind of lubricate the hips. Okay, knees back into center or hip center, toes under, lift up the knees. And then as you walk your hands back to standing forward bend, you'll scoot your feet a little towards your blanket and then let your hips reach towards the ceiling and let your head lower down, holding on to either your elbows or nothing, or no bones. Elbows or no bones. And with the nose bowing down towards your legs, you let the weight of your head actually manipulate the sensation of loosening the neck and breathing up wide through your ribs. So feel where the body weight is on the right foot and then on the left foot. I'm not asking you to balance on one foot, but just notice the weight distribution trickles from side to side. And then feel if you like to do that little mild rocking, or if you feel most comfortable kind of plummeting your weight straight down. Rocking is pretty soothing, so you might like a little bit of that nuance in your pose. Now, as you bring the knees to a stronger bend, having that support for the arms is a little bit challenging, that you can actually reach back forward on the floor with ease. So I want you to get a feel of your knees so that they're like kind of close towards your waist. So you are trying to get a pretty far forward motion. And the breathing in the pose is what's going to help you stay centered, right? So when you go into this forward bend, it's a little bit foreign to your daily breath practice when you're standing upright. So I think it's a great place to spend time is upside down, but it's just good for the brain, for the heart, for the lungs. A lot of elasticity in those areas from upside down. So as you walk the hands on forward, we're going to try an upright push-up position. So I want you to walk on forward with your hands and kind of reach your heels back. So you're going to keep the arms toned, keep the heel bones reaching back. And we're not going to do a bunch of push-ups, but I want you to find that plank position, okay? And try to come into it and be with it versus kneeling back down quite yet. Now, when you're here, can you reach your heels back and feel the abdominal sides that you were twisting through? Focus, breathe. And then we lower down the knees. And then we turn the bolster, lengthening forward so it's straight underneath you, spine-wise. And then I want you to pull it in enough towards your blanket so then when you lie on the bolster, you can put your hands in front and bring your forehead down. Okay, so it's crocodile pose. So with the weight of the body, relax the pelvis. You know, one way to work with that tone is we work on a strengthening position and we take a moment of pause and then feel if we can structurally kind of integrate back into something remarkably similar with our body tone. That's like good for the nervous system in this practice. So give about another 30 seconds with your head down. And now feet are apart, the tops of the feet are resting. And even when you lift your head right now and you slide your elbows so they're besides your bolster and sphinx pose, kind of notice the touch down of the forearms from the elbow to the hand. And then when you get a feel of your ribs, my hope is that you can use the bolster width, right? You want to use a standard flat bolster for this, as if you're putting both of those rib cages and kind of flattening them out, strengthening into the breathing. You know, if the shoulders are shrugging and kind of tossing your head down, feel the forearms pressing. Slide the hands back under the shoulder line and feel the elbows, wings out, tip of the elbows moving out. Lift up and then squeeze them in as you're coming up with your chest and your hips still on the bolster. So up dog. And kind of feel how that works the muscles in the back nicely. It's usually just simply be slower, conscious. You can create all kinds of sequences. Okay. Now feel that arch. And then just about half the way back towards table, you're going to bring the knees closer. Step the left foot to the top left corner so the foot is turned out with the right thigh stretched down to the bolster. Well, it's already going to go down into the bolster, isn't it? It's not required to do anything extra unusual, but feel the weight band of the thigh. Both the thighs have a unique sensation. Right, one is inner, upper, one is front and center for the right thigh. And then when you change it, feel if you can just simply Let the toes maybe hook under on the right foot. Shift the left leg back, and then step the right foot to the top right corner. Make sure the knee is not going over the toes on the right foot. So the knee is just simply above the ankle, even though the foot is turned out, right? The knee is still above the ankle. Yep. So explore where the weight is in that front left hip. When there's extreme sensation, the breath might be like 40% of your focus because you're kind of working with your nervous system to be present. So doing what you can. Sometimes you wander in and out. I know at home practice, you kind of do what feels helpful for you. So use the time that you set aside for your practice, however it ends up. And we'll keep it on this right leg. So we'll let the toes hook a little bit. Now, it feels to me that if I didn't put my toes under and I try to move my hips back, it would strain my back. So I think it's just interesting to notice what an actual foot does all the way into a back. It's like everything seems to help out something. Every part is important. So turn the bolster across. And walk the right foot, toe, heel, pivot, pivot to pigeon. The pigeon pivot, right knee open, left side back. I think elbows down is probably good on this shape. This is going to be before we go into legs up. So it'll be a nice kind of draining of that right hip. But for now, we're soaking it. We're kind of marinating into the shape. Cooking it. Okay, hip is on 400 degrees here. You know, and if the pelvic basin, if it feels, you know, fairly stimulated with the shape, right? It might feel like there's part more stim than the other. You can always bend your left knee and move your foot towards your buttock and feel the difference in the stim on the hip. Yeah, the weight is transferred for me on my right hip, but I find one side, my sitting bone is a little more connected than the other side down to the bolster. So, you know, you do little habits to help yourself find some sanity. This is a good one to have a timer on, so you do your time. If this hasn't become a knee issue pose at this point in your life, this is a good sign. Sometimes it does have some knee challenges. So if it's too much, you can back off or have something under your right sitting bone to hold your hip up. Usually the bolster does the work, so it's not so aggravating into any knee, the bolster lift. So when we come up, we're gonna move our right weight into the thigh and then swing the left leg forward. All right, okay. So get some blocks besides your bolster. Heading into the final spinal here, I want us to get a few more in, but not overdo it. I don't think that's probably what you want to do, is too many pose patterns. So have a sandbag in your lap. Go ahead and get it. And then you can get right on up. So I've got a blanket behind me. I'm going to toss it farther back. And then when I move back and lift up my legs, I'm going to actually lift them up with the sand on the feet to begin. So make sure that you're on the bolster first, because once you get your sand on your feet, it's hard to wriggle around with your hips. And then once your knees are in and your sand is on the bottoms of the feet, you can then push the legs to have that elevation. And as the leg pattern lifts, well, actually it just gets to go up. It doesn't necessarily, aim higher and higher, but the intention, I think, is important here. So flexing, one sand is probably plenty to emphasize right now. If you like two and you have two, you could put one on your ribs, and that will add some benefit to your breathing. It'll add a challenge, and bring you some benefits. And then when the back muscles are settling, notice what you can do with your arms, right? Just find ways of moving your elbows wide. That doesn't mean your hands have to be splayed out or cactus. Sometimes I like to have it so my hands are my bolster, palms down the very side, and then try to get my elbows wide. And then I can flip the hands back to cactus. So you can kind of play with that. So you feel like you're a little bit of a puppet with your hands. Puppet pose. So feel the flex of your feet and the length of your inhale. And as the diaphragm flows and expands the abdomen, the abdominal organs are pressing to the diaphragm as you exhale to move it even more steady up at the base of the heart. But there's resistance on this pose for the diaphragm muscle that has to go against gravity to inhale, to actually start its starting position. What its instructions were at birth, right? Was we go this direction for this lifetime, right? So as you inhale, the diaphragm moves down from the heart and lungs. And as you exhale, it moves back up below the lungs. Below the heart really is its attachment. Now feel where the pelvis has its weight right now. You know, is the weight closer to your tailbone, so you move your feet a little forwards. That's important to try for. You don't have to be drawing the legs so far front you feel like you're arching further into your shoulders, but tempt yourself to be a little, to kind of test your core string here. And a couple leg presses, at least two, you know, maybe go for 4 to 6, but bend the knees and then push the feet so you think they're going straight up, but they are going below you in some ways too. So feel when you get upside down, it can be a little disconcerting in your nervous system and how you're orienting your muscles to connect. So give it a try. You're pumping the legs, bending and straightening. Yep. And you get a feel here of the movement kind of slide in your back. I like the slide when the knees draw it down. It slides the back to length and then pushing back up. I try to co-balance that length with the strength in my stomach. And you could go all day doing these leg presses. So let's take the sand away and we'll bring a block between the knees and we'll move them just simply side to side with that fashion of warming up the back brace, right? The back muscles, the brace of the lumbar, and just let it kind of ooze side to side so you feel some loosening up in that back frame. Now I want you to try, when you have that block between the knees, to let your feet lower down on the floor, forward to your bolster, and just feel this bridge pose. This is bridge again, but it's just a different wave of movement in the pelvis. So you can feel how your hips drop down, even if it's just that they get kind of comfortable and they don't want to do much, so that they'll take the route of relaxation. So bring your knees to your chest, hands on the bolster on the very edge towards you, and push it away. And as the spine guides down all the way to the tail, step your feet on the bolster and lift up your hips into bridge pose again. So the hips lift, the arms are down forward towards the bolster, and the thigh muscles circulate and strengthen. and lower down the spine. Take the block out, cross the right leg over the left. I would put a block on the left side so that when your knees go over, I'm going to push my bolster a little bit forward so that I can be a little cozier. Knees to the left, you can put a sandbag on the outer right hip or the top spot. You can also recognize your sand might be overhead if you wonder where it went, but put that sand support. This is a fairly intermediate pattern of twisting the leg, so it's completely wound, right? The legs are in eagle pose. So it's a twisted leg position, but open out the right arm and let that chest on that right side really open. So head turns a little to the right, just the amount that your back muscles of your neck can ease. Yeah, make it simple with your neck response. Feel the belly move with the breath. This is simple. Okay, so in this hip twist, but also a surge of support for your hip. Okay, now the left hand will help slide that sand away. And then when you come back center, I want you to counter twist it. So keep the left foot on the bolster, let the knees shift over to the right. So this is a no sand zone one. So you get a feel for this left outer thigh flesh, the IT band. It's a nice stretch to get through there. And then as you bring the knees back up center, uncross, windshield wiper, feet on the bolster, knees swing side to side. And as you aim the knees over one side to the next, get a feel of the arch in the back that allows you to have that range of motion of your knees. So if you pinned your back to the ground entirely, then you couldn't really swing the knees. So you want to have a good blend of reactions in your muscles. Okay, left leg crosses over right, knees to the right. You can add that block under your legs on the right side. You can scoot on your bolster, how it feels helpful. Some people like to have that ball at their sacrum, I know. And we're just changing it up so that we can keep somewhere within the time agreement, rather than keeping it forever, but we'll stay within little time management here. So maintain that sand support if it's helpful for you. If it hurts or it's too much, then you just move the sand off and remain in the similar pose that works for you. If you don't like the bolster down in front of you, you can put it to the side under your knee as well. But work on that opening of the left arm. If this side of the chest feels very different than the other, then there's work to do to get balanced. There might be a lot of work to do. So try to make that awareness all the way up through the spine in the spinal twist. Now counter pose, sand off. Left leg is that top support. So we just keep it on and crossing, same thing. I don't move much except I push my right foot into the bolster, center my sacrum, and then bring the knees to the left. Right, so that little bit of spin through the hip. So you're gonna feel for that circulation, depth, and density here into your hips. Should help feel some loosening in this lower back track, into the hip bone, into the muscles. Just give it a few more moments here. Canter twist we hold for about half the time as the full twist, mostly because of the knees on this one. Just don't want to overdo it. We go for the underdo. Breathing deep. Exhale slow. Okay, now knees shift into center. And as we uncross, I want you to hug the knees in, really hug them in and roll up. And take a block set on the inside of your mat, right on the edges, and put your bolster on top. Put a blanket on that. And we'll take about a minute. It's a short time, but give ourselves the time when we have our feet up and they float to either sand is on your shins or on your ribs or no sand, you choose. Sand could also be from heart to belly. I always find this, if you have an eye pillow, put that on as well. But the sand might feel good so that you can center it so that you do feel a little bit of your belly, but it is nicely supported in the length of, and thinking about this as being the other side of your spine. So you do have like this spine in the front. You have a front spine, but we don't necessarily put the energy into that being supported, right? Usually it's the back that we're trying to loosen up. So open the arms and relax your legs. Receive and simply let the spine be heavy. And the weight of your feet relaxing. Even though you might not think about your feet as being weighted, you put a lot of weight into them during the day. So just let them be free. Not even trying to move them. Just let them be. They'll be stepped on, I'm sure, a few zillion times today. Now feel the reach of the inhale. That's like an action that you'll create or your body will naturally create. Alternate inhale and out breath. Take a final sweep of awareness through your feet to the front of the thighs. Let that be completely in receptive mode. And then feel what's above that is what really moves with the breath. So that receptive ability might be collecting the oxygen and then exhale, letting go of that respiratory waste, letting it go. Arms are going to slide in just enough to get rid of the sand. And as the sand might be for some of us on our shins, you slide your feet in and slide the sand off. But as you guide your knees to point towards you, can you reach around the back of the legs, hook on your hands, and then collect the upper and lower body. And let's just simply roll to a side and collect ourselves. And coming into a seated upright, and that path of movement is from our sitting bones to the knees wide, spine up, hands in front of the heart. Moment to dedicate your practice to receive wellness to yourself and to others. Inhale and exhale, bowing into your heart. and gratitude.